here. You are listening to the Trips and Global on Wheels podcast hour, the place to be to learn about the latest and greatest life stories from people who are doing incredible disability advocacy work. Devon Palermo, welcome to the Trips and Global on Wheels podcast hour.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So Devon Palermo is the Director and Adaptive Fitness Specialist for Definitive Progression Ignited. The acronym is DPI, right? Adaptive Fitness.
Correct.
He is the founder and principal director of DPI Adaptive Fitness. In their own words, DPI Adaptive Fitness is adaptive fitness for everyone at any level of ability. It is a safe and effective programming to improve functional strength, balance, speed, endurance, mood, and overall wellness. In addition to being a personal trainer for individuals with disabilities seeking to be fit, Devon is also the author of Disability Fitness Handbook, the Never Give Up blog, and numerous fitness, nutrition, and sports publications. Devon is said to be a leading authority on adaptive fitness for those living with or recovering from a disability. With over 15 years of experience in both fitness and rehab, he is the go-to resource for clients, therapists, and doctors looking to maximize the benefits of adaptive exercises to improve strength, balance, function, and abilities. He has worked as a strength and conditioning trainer. Devon regularly represents on adaptive fitness to local area hospitals, support groups, walk and rolls, and expos. Welcome again, Devon.
Thank you. Thank you again for having me.
Of course. So our first question is, how did DPI Adaptive Fitness get started?
That's a good question. It's always one that everybody hits me with first. So my background is I'm a licensed physical therapist assistant as well. And many years I worked in the spinal cord injury unit at MedStar National Rehab Hospital. I did both inpatient and outpatient, but the majority of the time was in outpatient. During that time, I worked with a patient who we became pretty close, as you would imagine. You know, in rehab, the therapist and patient relationship is usually one that grows. This patient, you know, and I had developed a good relationship, and she was coming to a point with her insurance benefits were getting ready to lapse. And with so much potential for outcomes to be left on the table, I didn't want that to happen. So we talked about it and decided that I would come to her house a couple of times a week just to exercise and keep her strong. And we did it for 3 or 4 months. And by the time her insurance benefits kicked back in, the evaluating therapist was expecting to see someone who had regressed in that short time period. But instead, she found that this woman had increased strength, had increased endurance, and was now able to work on things that before in therapy they were not able to. She was a quadriplegic woman, and so this showed great benefit to her function, her ability to do things as independent as possible. And soon word caught on, and I started getting calls and would moonlight after working a full day in the clinic. I would moonlight as a trainer. And fast forward to today, I stopped working in the therapy clinic and got a team built around. We got a location, and now we have, I'm happy to say, a fully accessible adaptive gym where we see everyone at every level of ability.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So what skills do you think does one need to create a useful adaptive fitness program for people with disabilities? Just because there are so many variety of disabilities out there. For me, I contracted polio when I was a toddler, and so that's why I use a manual wheelchair. But there's people with spinal cord injuries, and you are very familiar with the variety of disabilities that are out there that causes one to have a mobility disability. So
I would say the biggest thing is, and this is what I preach all the time, I think that adaptive fitness is more than just adapting fitness to someone. So it's more than just someone coming in and you recognize that they may you'd be doing things at a wheelchair level and then you trying to adapt exercise. It's way more than that. I feel like in order to be able to provide safe, effective programming, which is something that myself and my team really pride ourselves on, you have to know about that individual, about their diagnosis, about the precautions that are in place, the research behind exercise. As I'm sure you well know, many doctors have probably told you that exercise is probably something that you should not do. Living with polio, post polio, traditionally everybody would say don't exercise. You shouldn't be exercising. But now that there's more research coming out, they're starting to say, yeah, you should exercise because you still have to do your normal activities of daily living, but you don't need to be hitting it as intensely as possible. So I think understanding the different precautions, restrictions, and knowing that fully before working with someone. And again, not just adapting it to someone at their current level that you see them in, but really understanding that background plays a big role in developing and providing a safe, effective programming.
Yeah. So I'm glad you touched on that, on the polio aspect, and not overexerting yourself or even exerting yourself. Doctors have told me different things, and one of the latest news that I have been given is to not overexert myself. And so can you go into more detail on that, especially that fine balance between doing moderate exercise but not overexerting yourself, that balance?
Absolutely. I think, depending on the mindset of the individual, if you have someone that is, very gung-ho, like, let's do this, they may have the mentality of, we have to push, we have to push, we have to go, we have to do this. When you have a medical limitation in place, the medical limitation is not put there to hinder what you're trying to accomplish. It's put there to make sure that you're doing things safely. So for individuals living with MS, very similar to what you've been told as someone living with post-polio, you want to do things, but you don't want to overexert yourself, because what you can do is cause a remission or cause, in some cases, they say irreversible damage. When I say fitness, like for yourself or for a individual living with MS, let's say that mobility is a big need. You want to be as independent as possible in the home. There are exercises that can help you be as independent as possible at home, and it mimics those movements. But that doesn't mean that you should go and try to do a 20-minute, intense workout where you're dripping in sweat. That's not at all what it means. It means like understanding the limitations and doing things accordingly. I hope that touches on your question there.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Very informative. Moving on to like the core of what you do now, fitness. What do you think is the key to staying fit for people with disabilities that is different from the regular able-bodied population? What are some things you really have to look out for that you wouldn't have to be as a normal, regular personal trainer?
Got it. I think all of us need mobility. Like us as human beings, as a species, like our bodies were designed to move. And so, I think that the biggest thing is just finding a way to safely do that. So, I'm going to go back to that question that you asked earlier. Like, I think for myself as a trainer and any other trainer that's looking to work with this population, it's not just doing things quickly and putting it together and seeing what works. Like, I feel like really doing the research and understanding the background and knowing, what you should be doing, what to work on, and how to progress someone that's living with a disability is how you would design a good program for someone like that. I think the other thing is, and I mention this a lot whenever I do healthcare talks or courses, is I'm a big fan of improving what's called the therapist trainer model. So if you yourself are working with a PT and the PT knows that you're going to start coming to see me, then I want myself and that PT to converse and know exactly what you're doing, and maybe me be a supplement to what you're doing in therapy, and vice versa. So that way you have better potential for outcomes.
Yeah. And then, so I'm personally curious, what kinds of disabilities do your clients have normally, and how does that determine the type of exercises that, you choose for them or they choose for themselves?
Good question. I think the majority of the population that we see come in here for one-on-ones are stroke survivors, spinal cord injury, um, and then we do have some cerebral palsy and spina bifida that come in regularly for one-on-ones. Um, so let's start with like spinal cord injury and stroke. Like for those individuals, we're talking about trying to improve some neurological benefit from exercise. If they have some movement, then it's about us jumping on that movement and trying to get them to utilize as many neurons from their brain to make that connection to the muscles to improve that area. So if you're talking about a stroke survivor with right hemiparesis, we're working really hard on them using that right side to strengthen it. It's a term called neuroplasticity. It's where, you repeatedly do functional task-specific movements so that that person is able to, using the brain, rewire and find new ways to connect and make that movement happen. I'm not saying that it's the answer, but there's definitely a lot of research, a ton of research behind the effects of neuroplastic change and specifically high volume exercise training for your stroke survivors and your spinal cord. Now, for anyone else, let's say you're not looking at neural recovery, we have a lot of people that come in that are 30, 40 years post spinal cord injury or like, as I mentioned before, spina bifida, cerebral palsy, and they've been in the chair for the majority of their life. In this case, then it's more looking at them as an individual and what they can benefit from to decrease pain or the risk of injury. So if someone's a manual wheelchair user and they're pushing, 8 hours or more out of the day because that's how they get around, then I'm going to look at posture, at trunk stability, at strength and musculature in the back to help with, improving their posture and being able to correct. So it really depends on the individual and what they're coming in for, but for the most part, we can do maintenance and wellness or neural recovery exercises.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. So what challenges have you faced training people with disabilities that over the years that you haven't really encountered with able-bodied people, things that you have to be extra careful about?
I think, again, certain individuals, the restrictions that are involved that I feel like you should know about. I don't want to ever put anyone at risk, especially especially someone who already has something going on. If you're living with a disability, I don't want to cause any extra injuries or do anything that could potentially be harmful to you. So, I'll use specific examples. Your MS. Those individuals living with MS, I make sure to give them a good workout, but without pushing them to the point of exhaustion to where, they could possibly have an exacerbation and be laid out for months. For those individuals, like spina bifida, we got to watch out. They're allergic to latex and it can be fatal. So making sure that I'm double checking with them. I'm educating the staff, letting them know, keep all the latex products away, no balloon games or anything like that. So it's knowing those little things in there to make sure that you're doing things safely. Another one is quadriplegics. Those individuals living with quadriplegics at the T6 level or above, they cannot regulate their blood pressure a certain way, so they can get what's called dysreflexic, which is also a life-threatening medical emergency. So understanding those limitations and just being aware. I wouldn't say limitations, but just being aware of certain medical conditions.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I think this next question, we kind of covered it, which is exercising and how to do it in moderation. But I guess we were talking about polio earlier. Can you speak more generally on people with certain disabilities, whatever they may be, and needing to worry about being too active, but also needing to be somewhat active? Does exercising in moderation mean different things to different individuals depending on their disability? If yes, give us vivid examples of that.
Okay. So, I just had a session with a woman who has post polio, and the biggest thing that we're working on is, she works full time. She has to ambulate to get from the parking lot of her job to the office. So we're working on endurance for walk-ins, so she doesn't have to take lots of rest breaks. That doesn't mean that we're pushing it, but we're working on trying to improve her endurance, whether that be standing endurance exercises where she just has to maintain standing position while doing something else. Again, I'll go back to the balloon, me tossing a balloon while she's maintaining standing endurance. That's a great way to work on her ability to maintain balance and posture and endurance for the walking activity. I try to do things, again, I check in on her, make sure that she's doing all right. If she needs a rest break, then we're taking rest breaks for as long as she needs. But for the most part, I'm trying to do movements that simulate or are similar to what she has to do on her day to day, so that she's getting better at it. So that would be my best example for that population. I would say, let's go back to the example of someone living with MS. Again, you don't want to overexert, but they still got to go to the bathroom. They still got to get into bed, get out of the car, walk around the mall. So again, mimicking movements and exercises that will help those movements. So we have a mat here. I'll have you lay down on the mat and then stand back up nice and tall. And we'll do that for sets and reps according to their fatigue level, because they have to use those muscles to rotate, turn, sit up, and stand up to do what they're doing. So that's how I would do things in moderation. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're, using dumbbell weights or the machines here. It could just mean that we're simply taking a very functional thing that they do at home alone and making it an exercise.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Aside from DPI Adaptive Fitness, who are some other leading authorities in the sphere of adaptive fitness, either domestically here in the US or internationally, that you would like to or are currently working with or have worked with in the past? What did you like about how these individuals, companies, and or organizations approached adaptive fitness?
Okay. So I feel like adaptive fitness opportunities are on the rise. Um, it's still on the fence, like whether or not people are doing it the way that we've discussed, understanding the precautions and limitations, or just adapting exercise. So I feel like, with that being said, there's a lot of adaptive fitness opportunities on the rise. But the ones that I feel like are doing it the right way and the safe way are places like the National Council for Health and Physical Disability, NCPAD, the Lakeshore Foundation, which is, I forget where exactly they're placed. Shepherd Center, which is a rehab hospital, has an exercise program, as does Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago. All of these places are therapy clinics that recognize the need of transitioning into traditional exercise. And so what they've done is they've had their PTs guide the trainers there to understand and know how and what limitations. Also, there's a great center called the Ability 360 Center in Phoenix, Arizona, and that it's a huge all-inclusive facility where, again, they have that training staff that has that background and have been trained, but they also are doing things on a much larger scale. Quad rugby courts, adapted swimming pools, adapted all-inclusive cardio fitness classes. So there are places like that. So I feel like those are the places that I would love to work more with, that I would love to, continue to learn from or educate as well, because I feel like they have that mindset of making sure that the programming is safe.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. I'm glad there's a small community out there, at least in the field of adaptive fitness. So the next few questions touch more on fitness, but also disability advocacy. So is it difficult to make a mainstream, quote unquote, regular or normal gym like LA Fitness, any of the big ones, Golds, Vita, Equinox, into an accessible gym, an adaptive gym, where people of various mobility disabilities or other kinds of disabilities altogether could use it as well?
I don't think that it's difficult. I think that it's just a matter of them wanting to do it and educating their staff on how to do it. You know, I used to say all the time that making a gym accessible is more than just putting an accessible door button and having that be the way that people get in. It's got to be from accessible equipment to knowledgeable trainers. And I feel like the push, as I mentioned, there's a rise in adaptive fitness opportunities, but there's still not enough. And there's a lot of different places. The name escapes me now, but I worked recently with an organization that's trying hard to make all gyms be as inclusive as possible. Um, you know, right now I know that Planet Fitness has, I think at all of their locations, they have a SciFit upper body ergometer that is wheelchair accessible, but that's really the only piece of equipment. So I think that again, it goes back to them wanting to, whether or not it's within their budget, whether or not it's the demographic that they want to serve. But in order to be all inclusive, it needs to be more than just an accessible door button. It needs to have the equipment and the proper knowledgeable staff as well to go with it.
What would be your top recommendations or next steps for these mainstream gyms to make it adaptive or accessible to all?
That's a tough question because there's a lot that goes involved with it, especially when you talk about a big chain like that. From spacing of the equipment to the equipment itself, to the locker rooms, you know, all that good stuff. I mean, if you talk about the environment alone, there's certain things that they need to hit in terms of accessibility. A lot of these big fitness chains are on second floors of offices or buildings, so elevator access. You know, what if the elevator breaks down? That kind of thing. Um, I think from if you're not talking about the environment, then it goes back to them bringing on someone who's knowledgeable or certified as an adaptive trainer to at least mentor the other trainers in the staff.
Yeah, there's definitely, even though, it's not impossible, there are measures that need to be taken to make it accessible. So as you are probably familiar with, there are around 70% of the US population, the disabled population, is unemployed. So how do you ensure that your fitness programs are affordable to as many people as possible, as many people with disabilities? And I know you touched on this already, but just to make it not only at MedStar, because that's in Washington, D.C., right? But say if you are looking to go nationwide on it, and or just recommendations for making adaptive fitness more accessible to people with disabilities all over the country.
Hmm. I think obviously grant writing, you know, DPI is not a nonprofit, we're a for-profit. Um, with that being said, all of our profit goes right back into making this gym as accessible and as good as possible for the population we work with. But I think it goes back to establishing a nonprofit arm, which is something that we're in the works for doing for 2020, so that we can provide scholarships to those individuals that want more than just coming into a free program. um, I think that's where it starts, and that's where it can start for many other places as well. Is to develop some kind of nonprofit arm so that you can take in donations, so that you can fund at least the one-on-one sessions. That would be the one start. In addition to that, you know, you mentioned we do the programming in DC where it's no cost, but they also through that grant, they also have several programming options here at our site that's no cost. So we usually factor all that in. We do that. Our small group classes are nominally priced, so it's $20 per class, which is something where if you feel like, I tell a lot of people whenever they come in and do an assessment, like if they want to see me 3 times a week, I usually push them away from that and I say, look, let's do 1 time a week, one-on-one. You can come to the free class on Saturdays, and you can come to the $20 classes during the week. That's 3 days a week of you coming in and getting some good programming. If you want to do more from there, then that's different. But I feel like having the different options for people works well. One of the other things that we do is we have a program where an individual pays a monthly fee and they have unlimited access to the gym with a caregiver. So they can come in whenever they want, as long as our hours were open, and they can utilize all the equipment. We'll show them how to use it the first time. and their caregiver comes with them. They exercise for, $50 a month, which is, I feel like a steal with all of the adaptive equipment that we have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I certainly understand that an organization, needs to make money to run and be sustainable in the long term. Running a startup company myself. Um, so have you thought about going into the future, partnering with more nonprofits and making it scaling up, but also making sure that the affordability issue is taken care of in the long term?
I think we've tried that. I think having the relationship that we do with MedStar has been great because we've been able to grow their program and ours at the same time. We've worked with other facilities like the Stroke Comeback Center and Catalyst Adaptive Sports, which are both nonprofits as well. But I think that it goes back to what you said. If it's a business and in order to sustain, we need to be able to provide a certain amount of programming where we have the needs that we need to have for our facilities met. So because of that, I think partnering with other nonprofits hasn't been effective in the long term, aside from ours with MedStar. So that's where I feel like us doing a nonprofit arm of DPI will be that much more beneficial for the community that we serve, because we'll be able to offer more programming for less
Mm-hmm.
cost, for no cost.
Mm-hmm. For scaling up, where do you see yourself in 20 years, say?
So I mentioned Ability 360. That's a huge facility, and it's something that I would love to have or be a part of. But I get asked this question a lot. I get asked about franchising and things like that, and I really feel like when you franchise, when you scale, when you grow too big, you lose a lot of what makes this organization, to what people tell me, a great organization. So I want to focus on myself and my trainers being the absolute best at what we do. I want to focus on being able to provide the best programming that we can, and be known as a facility to come to when you're in the DMV.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, I'm scalable in terms of, like I said, the nonprofit arm, in terms of other programming that we do. But in terms of growth and growing, I'm not looking to be like this big organization that has several sites everywhere. I'd rather focus on being the best that we are at this site here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maintaining quality certainly is a challenge when you're scaling up. So I understand that you are a leading authority on adaptive fitness. So do you think, does this authority come from your educational and professional training, or your personal experiences with either at a family friendship level or with your clients? So in order to become a leading authority in adaptive fitness, do you need to have personal experience, or can the professional certifications, education cover it?
That's a good question. I think that it's combined. Everything that you mentioned. I think that having the professional experience in the setting that I was able to grow and learn from other great therapists, as I was a trainer, definitely made me the therapist that I was. And I think taking that and applying it to the population in the fitness setting, when really there was nothing else going on at the time. This is back in 2005. There was really no other fitness for individuals living with disabilities. So I feel like pairing that, and then discussing the growth, discussing the ideas that I had with colleagues, therapists, doctors. I think that kind of put me in there and established me as that resource. And now that I go and I present regularly to different hospitals and healthcare systems, whenever I'm speaking, they all nod their heads when it comes to the point where I say, when you discharge your patient, where do they go after therapy? Because most people, that's it. They don't know how to exercise in the gym, or they don't know where to go. We're that person for them. We're that person so that the therapists know they can refer to us and know that they're in good hands. So I think that all of that put together is what I feel like, not just myself, the team, this company, as an authority in adaptive fitness.
That's great. And in terms of, so it seems like you're more in-person, person-to-person training, physical contact. Have you thought of creating a virtual platform? for people with disabilities with virtual fitness programs?
Um, I've been asked that question before, and I've put some classes where, our adaptive boxing class is pretty popular, and I've put some of the classes, portions of it on YouTube, and people tell me that they do it all the time, or they get a good workout from it. It's something that I'm not opposed to doing, but I feel like where my energy for 2020, where that's going to go is, I'm partnering currently with an organization called the Medical Fitness Network. And that network is exactly what you and I have been talking about. It's making sure that there are personal fitness professionals that have that knowledge, that have that background, that have that continuing education to do what we say we're doing. So I'm going to be partnering with them in providing an online module and training for trainers to take to learn how to work with the population, so that we get more trainers out there that know how to safely and effectively design programming.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I think having especially not only for a business standpoint of scaling up, but just filling that void and that need, perhaps a virtual platform would be useful so that you can reach more people around the U.S. and perhaps even outside of the U.S. Internationally.
Agreed.
Just because there aren't very many people who do, that I know of at least, that do adaptive fitness and have so much experience in the field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely something to work on towards in the future. I think that we definitely have the content for it. We definitely have the population to do an online class. It would just be putting all those pieces of the puzzle together.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And for any new members going into adaptive fitness, say someone who doesn't have a disability like yourself, or friends or family necessarily, and have those personal relationships, what are your recommendations for people who are trying to get into the field and trying to really make a meaningful service for people with disabilities?
I would say to not get caught up with what looks cool. I would say to focus more on the education from quality organizations that have been doing this. So the American College of Sports Medicine has a inclusive fitness trainer certification. That would be a start. I mentioned before, the National Council on Health and Physical Disability has a library of programming for trainers to learn from. As I mentioned also just a little while ago, the Medical Fitness Network is going to be a giant resource for any trainer, any potential trainer, to get the education on not just adaptive fitness, but on diabetes training, on pregnancy training, on, there's just a variety, genetics training. There's a variety of healthcare experts and fitness experts that are coming together and putting this information out there, so that, again, you can separate between working with those individuals that really do know and have that background, and those that are just modifying and adapting to adapt.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thank you. And then the last question, hopefully, in case I think of any last minute ones. Last question is, so for regular personal trainers who do not have any experience with any sorts of disabilities and they want to go into adaptive fitness, or at least do an integrated system where they have able-bodied clients and individuals with disabilities, is it astronomically difficult? Do they have to do extra training, certifications, personal one-on-one experiences? Do they really have to have those things, or can they go for it and accumulate the experience
As they go.
as they go? Yeah.
I mean, I guess that goes back to the individual. Like, if you were working with that trainer, I'm sure you would want somebody that understands and knows, the background. So I'll tell you what we do here. I usually have people that are interested in being adaptive trainers, whether they're already a trainer or not. I have them come on board as an intern. Most of the time, it's an 8-month internship. That way, they're hands-on, involved, understanding, learning how to safeguard, learning how to transfer, learning, what population you can do what with. And then from there, taking the certification exam, as I mentioned, through the American College of Sports Medicine, or the International Sports Sciences Association also has a adaptive fitness certification. Now, getting that certification doesn't mean that you're good to go. That just means that you've scratched the surface on understanding what that certification means and what it entails. I think continuing to mentor, I'm big on mentorship because that's how I learned everything. Mentored underneath, more experienced therapists, more experienced trainers, and that's how you get that knowledge base that you can share and pass along and get your experience, your personal experience from. So I would say that I would say, um, if you're interested in learning or working in this population, go shadow at a physical therapy clinic, a rehab clinic where they're working with this population. Volunteer, shadow, learn as much as you can from that experience. Take those certification exams, continue to mentor, find somebody to mentor under, and then start building up your clientele. Continuing education is key as well. Make sure that you're constantly learning. Like, I think for my certifications, technically I can take any certification to meet my requirements. So I can take kettlebell training or exercise ball training or TRX training to satisfy my needs as an adaptive fitness trainer, but I don't do that. I purposely search for courses that are designed for stroke, spinal cord injury, cerebral palsy, spina bifida, neurological, and that's where I get my training from.
Thank you. As I foreshadowed in the last question, I do have one more question. Do you have to have a strong medical background as well as a strong and detailed understanding of all the specific disabilities out there in order to go into adaptive fitness, or can you learn as you go, as we were talking earlier?
Yeah, no, I don't think you need to. It's very helpful, and the majority of the trainers on our staff have that background. But it's not needed. I think that as long as you're open and willing to learn and learn, how to do things the safe way, then you can definitely, as I mentioned before, shadow, pick up from, the more experienced trainers, therapists, take your certification exams, and start to build your own personal experience. But
So
I
it
think,
sounds like,
I'm sorry, I was going to say, I think the worst thing that you can do is just, try to learn on the fly on your own without understanding the needs.
so you're really emphasizing on going through a program and being mentored in an apprenticeship type of thing.
Yeah.
Devon, thank you so much. That's all the questions for now, and we really appreciate you for taking the time on Christmas Eve to speak with us. I hope you have a really wonderful Christmas.
Thank you. Same to you. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it very much, and I look forward to seeing it or hearing it when it goes live.
Thank you so much. All right. Have a good Christmas. Bye-bye.
Thank you, you too.
Did you like this video? If so, share it with your friends and be sure to follow us on social media. And if you want even more resources, be sure to sign up for our email updates on our website, traipsingglobal.com. Keep learning new perspectives, keep being inclusive, because it will make the world a better place for you and for everyone else. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you on another episode of the Traipsing Global on Wheels podcast hour.